So, a little bit about Access Sport for anyone who isn't familiar with us. We're a national charity that formed in 2004 who believes that nobody should be excluded from the transformational benefits of sport. We support community clubs and coaches to tackle barriers faced by underserved children and young people. And we believe, and our mission, sorry, is that inclusion should be the norm across all sports. Clubs that work with us are invited to join our Inclusive Club Network, which I'll go on to talk a little bit about in a second. This is our third webinar since launching the network, so it's great to see not just some familiar faces, but some new faces on here as well. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Inclusive Club Network, it launched in September last year and is a national network of clubs, all working towards the same goal of transforming the lives of disadvantaged and disabled young people through sport. The network is a space to connect with like-minded clubs and people, share knowledge, learn from each other's experiences, and celebrate the incredible work that's being done in community sports clubs just like your own. Up until now, like I said, we've hosted a couple of events, including our Neuro Inclusion webinar and also our Make Club for Girls webinar. And we hope to expand on this offering in the future. So keep an eye out for that. It's a really exciting time to be joining the network. So if you're interested in being part of it, please do reach out. There'll be a QR code at the end that you can scan that'll take you to our webpage, and we'd love to hear from you. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you'd like to reach out and ask me any questions or even just organize a time to talk more about the network, that would be great. I'm going to hand over to Alex now, who's going to do the rest of the webinar for us. Thanks, guys.
Hi everyone, and thanks Shauna, and apologies for the premature slide change there. My mouse seemed to want to get started early, so yeah, apologies on that one. But yeah, good evening everyone. Lovely to see you all. Great to get to meet everyone. I think I probably won't have crossed paths with a number of you today, so before I get into what we're going to cover, just give you a bit of background on myself. So my name's Alex. I run our Young Leaders Academy here at Access Sport, and my work's based primarily in Manchester. So my background's been in youth sport and participation and careers and development generally for young people for quite a while. So I'm really excited to share a lot of this today. I think it's hopefully should be a really nice introduction for you all. So on to what you're here for. What's in store for today? So today we'll cover what Youth Voice is in quite an introductory way. It's going to be a bit of background on a bit of theory. So I'm trying to pitch this around quite an intro. So we might do a future session going into a bit more of a deep dive if people are interested. So for today, just introductions and go from there. I'll then hand it over to Nikki from Redbridge Spitfires BMX Club to talk about their club and how they involve young people in the work they do. And then after that, you'll hear from Dren and Sammy, who are two members of the Access Sport National Youth Board, who'll share their perspectives on being involved in the youth board and what it means for young people to be engaged in decision making. As said, any questions, pop them in the chat. I'll try and answer as we go or at the relevant times. So yeah, just please do keep your questions coming. So first part, what does Youth Voice mean to you? Before we get into the actual session itself, I thought it'd be really interesting just to hear from yourselves on what Youth Voice means to you and get an idea for what we're thinking in the room. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to have a think. Well, 2 minutes to put something in the chat. Answering that question, what does Youth Voice mean to you? You might want to think in your club, you might think generally, might be in other circumstances or situations. So what does Youth Voice mean to you? No wrong answers. I will be giving a bit of a definition and an intro next after this. So don't worry, it's just seeing what we're thinking. So if anyone's got any thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat. If you do want to come off mute and share, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I think you should be able to put your hand up, but yeah. So one more minute. Please feel free to put anything in the chat. empowering young people to have a say in how their community clubs develop and impact them. Love that. Love that. Someone's read the slides. For me, it's co-working to ensure we deliver what young people really want and not just what we think they want. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Nicola. Empowering and shaping, yeah, 100%. Thank you, Hayley. Oh, I've got too many coming in now. I can't keep up. Listening to young people is important to shape sessions and make them more fun and accessible. Yeah, 100%, Tom. Love that. And creating a meaningful way for young people's opinions and ideas to come through and shape the offer. So, thank you, Jason. From Anthony. So important for young people to get involved early, as the clubs will resolve otherwise. Yeah, 100%. It definitely does help with keeping young people engaged and involved. And from Nadeeb, supporting young people to have a positive impact and affect change in their communities. Yeah, love that. I think the key themes there are completely right. We're looking at change and shaping our offers with young people at the heart of that, and having their opinions and voices heard to really have a say. But one more from Karen, allowing our young people to have input on their sessions and support this whilst we wish to take on responsibility of leading. Yeah, love that. It's really great. Looking forward to going through the next bit now. So, as we said, and as you guys mostly covered there really well, I hope you're all here because you've got hopefully an interest in Youth Voice, or you're curious to find out some more. So just to go over to recap for anyone who is coming in new, Youth Voice is all about the opinions and thoughts of young people. In our context, it's mostly related to our clubs or our work, but it's important to consider the wider world and how external influences shape young people and everything they do. Youth Voice work is all about ensuring young people are at the heart of what we do. It's something that's really important to Access Sport, but we think that it will also be quite important to a number of you as well. It's all about ensuring their voices are heard and they're able to shape the things that affect them. So this could simply be things such as having a vote on the new kit, or discussing training, and what skills they want to learn in the session. So when we think about some of the benefits, we all want young people to enjoy sport, and by supporting them to shape their sport, young people can become more engaged and take ownership of the activity. That's something that's really important for long-term benefits, and can really help keep young people engaged with your clubs. Young people as well have some amazing ideas. Hearing those ideas can give your club a boost. It can really help improve the club in ways you might not have thought about. And young people might surprise you with new and innovative ways of doing something that you've not thought about before. As it says at the bottom there, so most sport is played by young people statistically. So it's only fair that they get to have a say in that, and they get to shape what that looks like. So on to a bit of theory. As I said, we're looking quite light touch tonight, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into this. And if you've got any questions, again, please put them in the chat. I'll try and answer as many as I can. So here you see the ladder of participation. And when we talk about Youth Voice and more generally around youth participation, this is one of the key bits of theory that I like to look at, one of the things I like to use. So the ladder of participation is a ladder, and it's a bit of a guide on how engaged young people are in decision-making processes. Generally, we want to aim for organisations that work with young people and are focused on young people to be at the top of the ladder, with young people and adults sharing decision-making responsibilities and working together. Towards the bottom of the ladder, you'll see statements for when young people maybe aren't fully engaged with, and where adults or organisations are seeking to seem more youth-focused than they are. It is a process, and getting up that ladder does take time, and there is no shame in starting from one of the lower runs and running up as to the top. The model can be really useful when we think about Youth Voice and how we listen to young people we work with. When consulting young people, it might start out towards the bottom and asking young people about things, going to them directly and saying, here's an issue, what do you think about this? And that's still positive. That's still a really good step. And whilst it might not be working with them, you're still getting an input on something, and that is good. But at the top, it's really important to sort of look at those other ways we can sort of engage young people more actively. A lot of groups do get stuck around the bottom or the middle, and that is one of the harder bits to get out of. The key to good youth voice work starts around step 6, where adults might start a conversation, but young people's voices are heard and their decisions are shared. So this is where simple efforts such as "you said, we did" can be really effective in the showing positive influences of your youth voice. So when I talk about "you said, we did," for those that might not have seen campaigns like that before, "you said, we did" is something that a lot of groups will use, where they'll consult young people, and that can be in a number of different ways that I'll cover in a second. And to show that those things are being actioned, the adults in the situation will go away, do that, and then highlight the changes that have been made. So it might be that you've got a new kit and you've spoken to the players about what colour they want it to be, or the design, or the brand, or all number of different things we might think about with a kit. When it comes to the "you said, we did," you might then take that and go, here's what we did. We've changed the kit because you said this, this, and this. And that's a really positive way of building that relationship and building up that youth voice work here, and taking into account young people's thoughts and feelings, and ensuring that their voices are heard. When we get more towards the top of the ladder, and we're looking at, so that would probably be around sort of step 4, step 5. When we get towards the top and we're looking at, step 7 here, young people lead and initiate action. That would be the other way around, when we're looking at young people coming to the people who are making the ultimate decisions and saying, this isn't right, and having a forum to say that or submit their feedback, and then working on that solution and giving young people the power and the ownership to take over and take that control and lead on that. Okay, any questions so far? No? Amazing. Okay. Any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat. You can always hop back. So I don't want to steal too much away from our next upcoming presenters. So just on what this might look like and what this might look like for youth participation and youth voice work here. I've got a few options here and how you can capture young people's voices and their feedback in some hopefully quite simple ways that you might be familiar with. So one thing to start us off is surveys. So surveys are a really simple tool for young people in the club to give a great bit of perspective and answer some really valuable questions for you. They can be really short. It doesn't need to be a long written form. So when I say survey, I also mean like simply at the end of a training session, a coach asking their team to raise their hand, yes or no, based on a few questions. Things like that can be done. You can write that down and you can get feedback back from the whole club quite easily on things like that. Obviously, that's a bit limited in terms of you can't do a lot of detailed answers, but it's a really good start. It's a really simple and achievable way to start getting some input from young people. And you could ask things simply as, do you enjoy training? Do you feel welcome at the club? Do you like what time we train? Really simple things that just give a bit of input from young people. Next up, we've got feedback or suggestion boxes. So specifically for the young people themselves. And it could be useful to have a box either in your clubhouse or when you bring to training, where young people can share their thoughts anonymously, or they can write their names if they want to. Again, it doesn't have to be the young people writing this down, just to make that feedback easier and to ensure that every young person can answer can put things in. It can still be an adult that submits those or writes the notes down. And it might even be a simple something that you've heard a young person say to you in a passing conversation and saying, "Oh, I wish we did this here." Writing it down, having a place to put that, or having a place to submit that feedback means it's getting captured, and you're then getting the voice of young people informing your decisions and your processes. So it can be really beneficial. One thing to consider for this is you do need to have somewhere to put it, and also you need to have something to write on available. There's no good having a suggestion box if you then don't have anything to write suggestions on. You would be surprised how many people I talk to who miss that step and wonder why they're not getting any feedback from anyone. Then coming on to slightly more intensive options, or a bit more formal as well. So youth voice groups, but is the first one, and this just involves getting a group of young people at your club together and talk about what's really important to them. And it can be really useful. Ideally, this group would represent your members across the club. And the key is to try and make it as fun as possible where you can. Doesn't mean that you'll be doing loads and loads of different things, but it can be really beneficial to just get a bit of a flavour for what people are thinking. Then finally, we've got youth boards. And again, this is a more formal than a youth voice group or youth forum. And this could be a structure generally involves some election process or nominations. It doesn't have to, but can be really useful to do that as well. Generally, when we talk about youth boards, these structures tend to mirror the structures we see in other places. Or in your committees. So if you have a committee or a board, what does that look like? And could something similar be set up for young people to sit on? Or even better, could you invite young people in to sit on yours? And, yeah, could there be a youth representative at your committee? These are all a few ideas for you, but these aren't definitive. These are 4 options at different levels that I want to put to you now as a starting point to think about. But it is really about finding what works for you and your club. And it leads us on quite nicely because you're going to now hear from one person who knows a lot about this and can give you some real practical examples from their own club themselves. So any questions, as I said, please put them in the chat, but I'll now pass on over to Nikki.
Hi, everyone. Alex has stolen half of my presentation, I think. I am basically, I think, going to be reiterating a lot of what Alex has said, but how we've actually done it in the real world rather than just in theory. But my name's Nikki Tyso, and with an awful lot of help, I run Redbridge Spitfires, which is an inclusive BMX club in Northeast London. And I've also, on the call is one of our young people, Tom Wood. Say hello, Tom, if you're there.
Hi.
Yeah, there, see, just to prove if he's really here. And yes, we're just going to be talking to you a little bit about our experiences of involving young people in our club. From the moment we started the club, including young people who ride with us was really, really important to us. And in fact, we wouldn't be able to run the club without the young people that support us now, especially Tom, which I'll come on to a little bit further. Sorry, I've completely gone off my little notes I've written. So I've got a couple of slides as well, just with the headlines. Without the young people who attend your club, there is no club. That's the first thing to, I think, really to remember. And making it their club gives them a real sense of belonging and a sense of ownership, which is really important when it comes to building a club. And it really helps develop that team spirit. Just to completely steal something that Alex talked about, the first thing we did when we decided to form as a club, we encouraged the riders to design their own kit. and they did a really amazing job. They very quickly decided they wanted a camo print, which we were like, okay, if that's what you guys want, that's fine. But they brought in the purple, which is the theme color of where we train, which is not something we'd thought about. And we've ended up with this amazing purple camo kit. And that's not what the adults would have gone for at all. But it helped give the young people that feeling of ownership, which is what we really, really wanted when we only had 5 or 6 riders. So we started right from the beginning. And something else that Alex talked about, we have a rider representative who is part of our club committee. It's their role to bring the opinions and thoughts of all the other young people to the committee and to hold us to account, to ensure that we're running a club that continues to be what they want, not what we want. Because I think, as we keep saying, as much as we think we understand the wants and needs of young people, we don't. We like to think we do, but we don't. We really encourage volunteering by our teen club members. This started when one of our riders initially approached us regarding volunteering for Duke of Edinburgh. And it's been really, really successful for us. By doing it through Duke of Edinburgh, or very similar schemes, it's all the schools near us run Duke of Edinburgh. So sort of all the kids, when they get to 13, 14, they do Duke of Edinburgh. And so we encourage them to use the BMX for their volunteering section, and they love it, and they all carry on volunteering. It gives them a taste of it without them having to commit long term. They know it's just the 3 months. That 3 months gives them time to fall in love with it. And we get to see an amazing side to the young people. Anyone here who's mum of teens or parents of teens will understand that it can be quite stressful at times. And to see this really caring, supportive and patient side to the young people when they're working with the other children is incredible. And we get a lot of feedback from the other parents on what a difference the teen volunteers make for their children. Our 2 coaches are both 50-ish-year-old men. Having 14, 15, 16-year-olds come in and help coach the young children really gives a sense of role modeling, but also they're able to bond in a way that a 50-year-old man just can't. We recently got a message from a parent that her son isn't very good at listening to instructions, doesn't like following orders, but he's engaged so well with Tom and looks up to him in a way that he wouldn't with adult coaches. And he's coming on leaps and bounds because of that. So it's a really different aspect to the coaching. And this is particularly with being a very inclusive club. We have a number of riders with autism, including non-verbal riders. And the young people really seem to be able to bond and engage with them in a completely different way. And it's just a delight to see how they come along. We also use our riders to provide our junior coaches and volunteers to provide one-to-one support, which we couldn't do with only the adult coaches. It allows us to have more young people, so the younger riders, the less able riders, and also those with additional needs such as autism, because we can use the volunteers to provide that one-to-one, whether it's just riding behind a rider around the track, reminding them to pedal, reminding them to look ahead, reminding them what they've got to be doing. It's fantastic. And the differences we've managed to see with those with additional needs especially has just been, it really makes it all worthwhile. And they wouldn't engage with the adults in the same way. And they build some wonderful relationships. Could I have the next slide, please? By getting our teen coaches qualified, our junior coaches, they're able to provide more than just the support. They're able to start by helping our riders with specific skills. They've learnt the skills through getting the coaching qualification to be able to plan what they want to do. And then as they get older, they're able to take on more responsibility within the sessions, more of a leadership role. To use Tom as an example again, Tom's now 16, so he's able to lead sessions with an adult, but not necessarily a coach supporting him. So we recently lost the coach who ran our morning sessions for us, and Tom has offered to step in and run these sessions without taking our coaches away. They actually volunteer for a different cycling club on Saturday mornings. And so Tom's been able to do this. So we've been able to keep these sessions running with the help from one of our other junior coaches who's going to support him. His younger brother, who isn't a formal volunteer, but is going to help the kids get their bikes, things like that. Also finding bursaries that help make it affordable. So being in cycling, for us, it's the Flying Start bursary from British Cycling, which means we pay a third of the cost. And so this has made it affordable for small clubs because we're not a big club. And also the support from Access Sport has been absolutely invaluable. Don't ever worry about reaching out to someone at Access Sport and saying, help, can you help me find a way to do something? I'm sure they've got contacts who can help find bursaries for teen coaches and the like. Also, include them in everything. Don't treat your young volunteers, your young coaches, like lesser coaches. They are as important to your club as all the adults. So include them on your website, in your WhatsApp groups, in planning. Just remember that they are teenagers and might need a little additional nagging at times. So extra reminders. And really, really importantly, is remembering that they are teenagers and remembering why they joined your club. They didn't join your club to become a coach. They joined your club to do the sport, to have fun. And so we make sure to keep one session ring-fenced, where our junior coaches can be riders and all our volunteers can be riders and have fun without having to have any of the stress of coaching or supporting others. So even though we often have people wanting to come and join that session, we know that a lot of these people would need the additional support that the junior coaches give us. So we keep that session ring fenced so that they can still have fun. Is there anything you'd like to add, Tom, that I've missed?
I've got a couple of stuff down
That'd be great.
that I've written. I've said that because it's cycling, I've got my level 1 coaching qualification, and then I've also got a discipline focus qualification. So it's just more stuff I can put on my CV, which is wicked because on top of all these skills I can write down and talk about all the qualifications, I've actually gained communication skills.
You
We're not,
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're a very diverse club. So yeah, I can talk to people and communicate a lot better than I would have beforehand. I think it's also wicked because if as a rider representative, if I'm not happy about the clubs being run, like finance or admin, I can speak up about it, and you have the opinion of the people in the club rather than the ones who aren't taking part. I think the most important thing on the front of everyone's mind should be without the people in your club, without the youth doing it, you don't have a club to run.
We certainly don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I think
Tom.
that's very important.
I should also say that as adults, we have to be really open to supporting the young people, sort of especially 16, 17, 18, they start applying for jobs, apprenticeships, university, and we're able to provide really nice references for them, which a lot of young people aren't going to have. The additional skills. One of our junior riders has recently applied to do her A-levels at a really good school, and so we've written a reference for what she does with us, and hopefully that's being counted for something. So, but does anyone have any questions?
Nikki, we've had a few questions submitted in advance that I think would be really interesting if I can ask those first. And
Yeah.
that also gives people 1 minute. That's your 1 minute, bit of time to think. In case they want to put anything in the chat for you specifically. So in terms of the questions we had submitted in advance, so one question was on, is it best to ask participants for feedback at sessions, during or straight after? Or would you recommend asking outside of the club setting or a separate time?
My opinion is that I think the problem is our club members range from age 4 to 18. We also include young people who haven't got the communication skills to be able to speak up, you know, non-verbal autism. They haven't got the ability to ask, especially so if we sent out a survey or something, that wouldn't be inclusive to all our members. So that's one of the reasons we've got Tom as the wider representative, because he can talk to the young people. He's going to understand what they're saying. They're more likely to talk to Tom than they are to me or my husband or one of the other adults. So far, it's been very informal. We're not very big, and I'm coming at this as someone who loves a survey. I would survey everyone about everything if I had the chance. But you have to understand your club. Find out what the young people think. Every club is going to be different. Every group of young people is going to be different. It might be that they really would like the idea of spending half an hour sitting around having a cake and giving their feedback at the end. But make sure it is inclusive for all the members.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Nikki, and I think you're right there. It is very much on trying to work out what's going to work best, and also trying out some different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If one thing doesn't work, try another one. I've done involvement and participation work for a long time, and all of a sudden in 2020 I could no longer rock up to groups with pizza and Coke, which is how I always got people to come along beforehand, because everything went digital. So it's taken a long time to work through and find methods that work now that worked in pre-COVID eras. So it's trying different things, finding what works. But from experience, food always helps.
I couldn't agree more. We've got one more question from Hayley, which is, what would be one key piece of advice you'd give your clubs who have limited youth voice at the moment?
Get Tom. No. Can I give 2 bits of advice?
Of course.
One is to find out what volunteering things your young people are doing, things like Duke of Edinburgh. I think that's fairly national, but I know there's other similar things. Encourage them to do that, and that gets their foot in to start getting them involved in the club in a more serious way than just sort of riding or whatever. And also have that one person who can be to sit on your committee, who can be your link with the other young people. It doesn't have to be voted in. To be, completely honest, Tom wasn't voted in because we're still relatively at the start of this pathway. Things will move on. So this is kind of step one. All 4 of our junior coaches have different roles, and this is part of Tom's role, is being the voice for all the other young people. So
yeah, 100%, and it goes back to that point about finding what works. If voting's what you want to do, great, but
yeah,
having a youth voice on your committee is a major thing. So yeah, it's not the barriers in the way to it.
Yeah, that's it. It's removing the barriers. Just if the barriers are causing a barrier, skip them. That barrier can come back in next year. Do whatever is easiest to start with, just so that you start hearing the voice.
Okay, we've got one more question for you, and then
Yep.
I'll move on. So this one's coming from Nakeeb, and it is: what methods have you utilised to create the volunteer working environment to encourage engagement, and has Youth Voice shaped this?
We've been shaped by what they tell us a lot. We listen to them. And all the adults involved in the club are working full-time jobs with their own family. We love to hear what the young people want because it makes life easier for us, less decisions we have to make. So obviously we utilised Duke of Edinburgh, and something that was actually decided upon today, and Tom doesn't actually know this yet because it was sort of a bit of a background chat from what other of our junior coaches have said, is we can't afford to pay people. We're a small club. We're inclusive. We charge very low fees every week. We make no real profit. But we really want to show the young people how much we appreciate them. And so it's things like, because Tom's going to be covering Saturday mornings as well as Saturday afternoons, buying Tom lunch, not charging our junior coaches for their ring-fenced ride session. So even though we can't pay them, we're not taking from them anymore, if that makes sense. And it is all baby steps. Don't think you're going to jump straight in there and run. This is, little steps. Each time we think of them, each time someone suggests them, just when someone says something, don't immediately think, oh, we can't do that. Stop, think, reach out, talk to people. So, yeah. But for volunteering, I can't recommend things like Duke of Edinburgh enough. I keep saying it. Because it's something anyone doing Duke of Edinburgh has to do 3 months of volunteering. What better way than to do it in the club that they already love going to?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to go back on your point about not having to pay subs and things, I fully endorse that approach. I
Yeah.
think it's a brilliant way of working with young people. So fantastic. Thank you, Nikki.
And they're giving way more to us than we could ever give back to them. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right. If we've got any more questions, thank you, Nikki. And if we've got any more questions, we'll come back to them at the end. But for now, we're going to move on forward to our youth board Q&A. So Sammy hasn't been able to make it tonight. So that means we'll just be hearing from Dren, who is more than capable to take the reins here. So I'm all good on that respect. The way this will work. So Dren, would you like to introduce yourself first and foremost, and maybe just share a little bit about your background and your involvement on the youth board?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Alex, for the kind words, and it's a pleasure to join you all tonight. So my name is Dren. I am a youth board member, and I have been for nearly 3 years now, funnily enough. So I joined back in 2021, and it's been a fantastic experience so far. So just a bit around the youth board itself. So we're a group of young individuals aged 16 to 25. We, of course, all have strong passion towards inclusivity in sports, making a difference to community sports, and essentially really driving access sports values and making a difference. We meet on a quarterly basis. So we have our board meetings then, and essentially what we do within those is we review what sorts of activity Access Sports done as an organization recently. We come up with different ideas and initiatives that Access Sports can then potentially embed within their future programs, as well as, for example, engaging in their sort of social media and stakeholder work with, for example, talking to organizations ourselves, again, sharing that youth perspective, what we as young people would like to see more of in these organizations. And so I think because I'm conscious of time, but I think that's a sort of summary of what we do as an organization and as a youth board, essentially.
Amazing, thanks, Dren. So the chat's open as well. Any questions for Dren, please do pop them in the chat. But we had a few questions submitted in advance. So Dren, just to kick us off, what originally got you interested in Youth Voice and joining the youth board?
So I think, as many other people will say when they, for example, join a trustee organization or a youth board, etc., is personal experience. So living and growing up in London, I have seen, for example, first of all, the transformational benefits that sports can bring. I mean, as someone who's a massive football fan and player, for example, I've seen how grassroots club can really have a positive impact on people's lives. So, for example, I think in terms of community clubs, for a starter, in terms of the benefits they bring to young people such as myself is, and it kind of touches upon what Nikki said at the beginning, for example, in terms of you getting a sort of self-belonging in terms of being part of that club. It really does form and help shape your self-identity. I think in an era whereby people have so many options in terms of what they want to do and what they'd like to be, I think they could sometimes get lost in translation. And so I think with sports and with these community clubs, they really offer a safe space for people to really take part and participate in something that they have a massive passion for. For example, another reason why I have, for example, been part, like in terms of my experiences of community sports, it's the sort of idea that it helps you feel that you could really invest in something that you're passionate for. I think community sports and organizations can have massive impacts in local areas. And so it really does help in terms of you having a passion for investing in something that you deeply care about. So that's sort of my experience in terms of community sports. But with Access Sports, for example, I think it was also that deep frustration that there are still massive barriers to entry in sports. I think it's something that is still a massive issue today. And so seeing the sorts of work that Access Sports really strive towards is genuinely inspiring. And of course, it's all well and good sitting in all these, trustee meetings or youth board meetings and seeing different ideas and perspectives come to light. But it's the groundwork that really matters. And for example, I've had the pleasure of going and volunteering at different Access Sports events with community clubs. And it's when you hear the perspectives of different parents and participants themselves where you really see the difference that these clubs are making. I think especially, for example, with lots of the sort of initiatives and events that Access Sports have run, being catered towards those who are, for example, with disabilities, you see, for example, the sorts of issues that parents have in terms of accessing, and having the opportunities to send their kids to sports events that are essentially inclusive and catered towards them. And so, for example, hearing such positive impacts and feedback that they give towards Access Sports only further drives you on to be part of it and really carry on making a difference. And so that's sort of benefits and why I kind of joined the youth board essentially. I could carry on talking for days, but I'm conscious that we only have an hour here.
No, thank you, John. It's really appreciated, and I think it's really, it comes clear how passionate you are about this, and yeah, really great to hear that every time. So our next question that came in was just around what do you think has been one of the most valuable lessons you've learned from starting on the youth board?
So alongside, for example, having the opportunity to attend all those, the ground events themselves, I think it's that piece around, and again, linking to today's session and its purpose, it's that youth voice. For example, linking to your theoretical ladder, Alex, lots of organizations may think, it's that sort of tokenist work in the sense that we'd like to hear from young individuals, but, the voices and opinions are never really translated into the work they actually do. But with Access Sports, I do genuinely feel like our voices are heard. And I think that's what really drives me on to carry on, being part of this organization. Like, it's all well and good, with lots of these organizations saying, young people are the leaders of tomorrow, but it's what we can do today to make that difference. And I think Access Sports has certainly provided that forum. For example, up until recently, I was the youth chair of the charity, youth board chair. And alongside, of course, chairing youth board meetings, I was also enabled to participate in the trustee meetings. And so that in itself really did give me, the sort of platform to really echo and voice young people's perspectives into the highest executive level at the organization. And so I think it was Access Sports making us feel comfortable and having that, voice to really influence the decision making of the organization. That has been something that's really highlighted and kind of stood out to me from the beginning, essentially.
Amazing, Dren, and it's yeah, really lovely to hear that. We've got one more question from Jason, which is what do you as a youth board do to try and measure your work promoting youth voice?
That's a great question, Jason. First of all, we've had the pleasure of running events ourselves. So Access Sports has essentially given us a budget and said, look, you've got this money, you do what you want to do with it, essentially. And so as youth board, we first of all, for example, identified what sort of issue are we really trying to tackle? Is it, for example, targeting events towards, deprived areas, or is it targeting, our events to certain audiences whereby they may not have access to the same participation in that sport? So we really do have that influence in terms of deciding how we would like to shape the event. And for example, we held one last summer, for example, and again, we really did have authority in terms of what we wanted to do, but alongside, of course, the support of seniors at the organization, such as Alex himself. And so in terms of measuring our impact, it was really like having these ideas and seeing them being implemented in person. And for example, that event that we did held, I think had around 50 or plus families attend. And so, it's just that sort of work that we really use to measure our success. Alongside, of course, lots of advocacy work, engaging different, sports bodies such as the LTA or UK Cycling, etc. So that's the sort of ways that we measure our work.
Yeah, that's great, Dren. And I think just to add to that as well, from our side, from the staff side, one thing we use to measure is how often the young people are working with other members of staff as well and across our team. And I think that's something really replicable for clubs in terms of how embedded young people are in the club and with the work you do. It's one thing to have a particular person with an interest or a particular adult with an interest working with those young people, but it's an even further measure when you see a number of people in an organization working directly with young people and taking on their voice and their support. And I think we've got to a good place now where a number of our young people are supporting different parts of the charity in different projects that interest them. And there'll be young people in your clubs who have an interest in different parts of the club. We've talked a lot about coaching here. It may be that there's a young person who actually is really quite interested in finance, wants to learn more about how the club is financed, and could learn a bit from somebody with a background in that, or a club member who does that for the club. There's lots of different avenues to look at. We have got some thoughts as well from Nikki, so I'll just read those out. Which is, I think some organisations worry that including the youth voice can lead to extra work for them, but we found the opposite. If you truly involve the young people, it won't add to the workload, simply make it better. I couldn't agree more, Nikki. All right, so I'm gonna move on because I am conscious of the time. Thank you so much, Dren.
Sorry, Alex, can I just very quickly kind of create my own question and just answer it very quickly? This is just in terms of advice for organizations that are, really considering or have started the process to actually embed that youth voice and providing the forums for young people to participate in decision making. I would say it's first of all really important to sort of question why you're doing it, and that in itself will really create the sort of incentives and rationale towards how you can really help shape your organization in terms of how you get those youth board perspectives and opinions across. I think it's about the culture too. I mean, for example, previous community sports clubs that I've been part of have always made a very welcome and comfortable space for us to provide feedback. And I think that needs to be embedded from early on. Say, for example, your community club is going to undergo a massive change, for example, in the next coming months or years. I think it's really important to engage young people from the beginning, as opposed to kind of leaving them as a side thought. Once that is actually implemented, just letting them know that this is happening. Because especially for young people, change can be scary. And especially if it's something that they're deeply invested in, such as their local club, I think they feel really appreciated in terms of, being part of that decision-making process. So I think it's all around the culture too. So that's the sort of the last point I wanted to end on.
And a great point to end on there as well. One final follow-up question from Jason as well, was, as you said, you're football crazy. So what football team do you support?
I mean, it's not a great time to be it, Jason, but I'm a Chelsea fan, unfortunately.
I happen to know that Jason is a Man United fan, so
Ah.
yeah. Oh, and Nikki's not a fan either. Oh no.
I was going to say this might cause a riot in the chat, I think.
Unfortunately.
I saved it for the end. I thought.
Oh, well,
Okay.
can I just jump in, Alex, just to get one, sorry to completely talk over you. Nakeeb's made a really good point, and actually, Dren, you might be able to speak on this a little bit of how you'd feel maybe reaching out to other youth boards from other organisations that have similar values to Access Sport, to reach a larger audience, and that kind of collaborative working with other people that are doing a similar role to you. Do you think that would be beneficial in terms of Youth Voice and the youth board?
Absolutely. I think it's always good to share best practice, and we're always welcome to, getting ideas from other youth boards. We need working, whether it's events or just ideas and, together essentially. So absolutely, I think that's a great initiative, Nikki. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
And thank you for the question, Nikki, because very valuable. Really love that. I think please do get in touch with us. We would be very, very up for hearing some more on that as well. And definitely up for working with the Muslim Sport Foundation as well. So definitely please do share that. Okay, so that concludes our Youth Board Q&A. I'm going to move to our next slide, which is what's next. There will be a bit of time after that for any more questions. If you want to put them in the chat, we'll stick around for a little bit, and between us, we'll do our best to answer them. But in terms of next steps for everybody, so the slides from tonight will be, as well as the recording, will be shared with everybody, and we'll also be sharing some resources all around Youth Voice. Those resources are pitched at different points, so please don't get overwhelmed if you look at one and think this is a lot. I've tried to share a bit of a mix for people who have different levels of interest, so please do have a look at those. We are also going to be recruiting for our regional Youth Voice groups. We currently are, these groups are based in Manchester, Bristol and London. You don't have to be in the immediate city area for those, just local to those areas. So if you know any young people from your club or locally in those areas that you think would be a really good fit, be interested in the work Access Sport do, the work of in your clubs, please do let us know, recommend them to us. Even if you just want to drop us an email, we'd love to hear more, and we would love to see them applying and getting involved with more work we do. And if you've got any questions, well, actually, before I go to any questions, I'm just going to hand quickly back to Shana in case there's any bit of the wrap up that I've missed.
No, you're spot on. I was just going to add to kind of what I said at the start. Well, I want to start by saying thank you so much to Dren and Nikki for jumping on and sharing their experiences and all their knowledge around Youth Voice. It's been such an amazing conversation. And thank you everyone who submitted a question. It's been really, really good. Like I said at the start, it's a really exciting time for the Inclusive Club Network. So if you would like to know more, please scan the QR code. There's some information on our website. And I'm looking to get as many clubs involved in the development of the network as we possibly can moving forward. So if you'd like to be part of that conversation, please do reach out. I'm looking forward to getting to know more and more clubs. Already chatting to Nikki away, trying to organise a trip to Redbridge after hearing her speak. So yeah, really looking forward to getting to meet more of the clubs that we are working with. I'll hand back to Alex if there's any more questions.
Okay, folks, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there, just so that I can see some of your faces if you're around. and answer a few more questions from the chat. So I'll stop sharing, and I can see everybody again in the full chat, which is lovely. So we've had one question coming from Karen. Do you have to register to be a recognised volunteer network for DofE? I'm going to assume that one's aimed towards Nikki.
I'll stop typing the answer and jump in quickly if that is the case. No, you don't have to at all. Basically, when a young person does Duke of Edinburgh, they give one of the adult coaches' names and email addresses. They get sent, the adult gets sent a link, and they just record on the website the volunteering that's been done and give kind of a final report. And that's it. So no, you don't have to register. They just give your email address.
Amazing, thank you, Nikki. And thanks as well from Karen in the chat, so perfect. We did have one question that was submitted beforehand that I didn't cover, so I thought it might be best to, for all of us to have a little bit of context to it. So the question came in, and here we go, sorry. And it was just around, how do you guide young volunteers if they need some mental health support or have mental health issues themselves? So anyone want to kick us off on that? I've got a few thoughts I can share. I'll kick us off with a few thoughts to share on that one. So from my experience, that can be a big challenge for yourselves as volunteers as well. And one thing I always will say to people working in clubs and volunteers in clubs is, it's not your role to be a therapist, to be a mental health practitioner, and that's not what's expected of you. So in your role as a club member or as a mentor for this young person, if that is the capacity you take, that's really great. And it's great to offer some support where you can in relation to the role they take on, in relation to being part of the club, and to be conscious of how you can help support them to be a member of the club and to be a coach or whatever role they take up. But there is an important balance there. So my best advice would be trying to have a good conversation if possible about how you can support that young person in your club capacity, but also recognizing that you have your own limitations and there's only a certain amount of support you can offer in that role. So that would be my perspective.
If
Nikki?
I can jump in again, yeah, very quickly. We all know how important it is to have a first aider at the club. It's a requirement. You can do mental health first aid. They're brilliant courses. And I would recommend having someone who is mental health first aid trained as well. It's mainly to deal with crises, events as they happen, because like you say, you're not there to be a therapist. If you're not receiving the support that a therapist gets, they get an awful lot of support in the background for dealing with things. It's very much just a bit of hand holding and offering any adjustments that the young people might need. But I would really recommend doing a mental health first aid course there, really. And you can do specific mental health first aid for young people. So
yeah, 100%. One more question we've had submitted, and anyone else with anything to add, please do submit them in the chat and I'll come around to those in a second. And this one was just, when do you start young people on the official coaching journey, upskilling them through the governing bodies? So from my side, with our young leaders work, so we do support young people with their coaching qualifications in that work, and we do support young people. The barrier is often age. Most governing bodies, you can't do a coaching qualification until you're 16. For some governing bodies, it's 14 to 15, and that might be more junior coaching course or an introduction course. And it will depend on the young people themselves as to when they feel they want to go and do that qualification. They don't necessarily need a top qualification to be a volunteer, to be a coach. As long as they're supporting a qualified coach on a session, then they can still support, they can still help. In most cases, do check. It does depend governing body to governing body. So for each sport, it may be slightly different. But for most, if they're supporting a session, that's fine. But in terms of when they start, it will be a case of when works best for that young person. Some will be super keen and up for it early. Some might want a bit more experience and to shadow a coach for a while or help out on a session for a bit before they then want to go on to that qualification. One thing I really would recommend, if you can get them onto a course alongside another club member, maybe someone they know, or if you've got a lot of coaches, see if you can arrange for one in club or with some clubs local to you. That can be really helpful, or with other young people, because it can be really scary going into that first coaching qualification at 16 and being the only young person in that room with a room full of adults who are doing their coaching. So that would be my side. Anyone else any thoughts to sort of add to that? No, perfect. Okay. So we've had a few more things coming through in the chat. Oh, and Nikki's added for cycling, level 1/intro to coaching can start at 14. But as that says, it's often down to the young people. We get our younger ones 12, 13 to stay helping out with smaller things like helping young riders get their bikes. And yet that's an amazing way to keep them engaged, keep them involved. We're talking about the coaching journey here. Do remember as well, there's other volunteer roles. There may be other things in a club that young people want to support with. It may be that they want to help with, managing the clubhouse or helping out with some of the other work around the social media. 100% great social media. Yeah, great social media representatives, and they will probably know how to do it 10 times quicker than we will, which is a big help. Just to go back a step onto Karen's point. So Karen's just said, our teenagers have set up their own group chat. We've had a little bit of nastiness within that chat that has been reported to us, and we've tried our best to stop it, but teenagers will be teenagers. Does anyone have any suggestions about advice we can give our children to support if they feel they cannot talk to us or junior coaches about issues in this group chat? Great question, Karen. And a very challenging part of, unfortunately, that does pop up more than we'd like. Anyone with any immediate thoughts wants to come in on that? No, so okay, from my perspective, and this is slightly limited in my role, but we generally avoid having a group chat within just the young people themselves in that instance for those reasons. One thing to be mindful of is that young people have their own phones, they can set up their own group chats. As you've said here, they've set up their own group chat. There's not a lot you can do about that at the time. And it's important to sort of think about your club processes and how you would deal with bullying within the club, if that is the form it's taking, and if that's the steps that are taking it. Even though it's in a WhatsApp group, or let's say WhatsApp, not specified, even though it's in a group chat, your club might have policies in place with dealing with bullying. If you don't, would recommend having a think about that and looking to set that up. Might be part of your code of conduct, and you can look to deal with those instances as you would in that respect. Where it becomes challenging is where either there aren't policies covering that, or if it's external and away from the club and not to do with the club itself, so it's just an external group chat, it can be then a challenge in a club environment to manage that. I don't have answers on that one, I'm afraid. It's slightly beyond my expertise, but I would advise in general just to have a look at what policies you do have. I'll see if I can find some resource as well around supporting in that instance from my side. Amazing. Okay, thank you for all your thoughts coming in there, folks. Do feel free if you would like to drop off. I know we're over 7:30 now, so if anyone would like to drop off, you're welcome to. Thank you for all your thoughts there. Really appreciate them. And yeah, it's great to hear all the feedback there. And the people will definitely be in touch. Don't worry. I will make sure that we follow up afterwards.
Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you very much, guys.
No, thank you, everyone, and thank you all. Really, really, really good. Charlotte, do we want to stop the recording there?
That's a great shout.